And anecdotally, there was a story of a guy who was a bodybuilder in his 60s, and he can no longer train with traditional leg exercises because of too much pain. And so his trainer put him on a protocol of doing sled pushes, usually 30 to 40 seconds of pushing and pulling 3 to 4 sets, right? And doing this like 2 to 3 times a week. And his legs grew from doing this, so much so that he decided he was going to go back into competing. And when he did, in the drug-tested federation, he was actually able to outperform many of his younger competitors in the show. Hey guys, Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer at Functional Aesthetics EC, helping average guys perform better inside and outside the gym. So in today's video, we're going to be covering 6 tips for guys over 40 to continue getting stronger as you age. Because it is quite possible to maintain or even get stronger depending on what your level is when you started when you were 40, all the way up into your 70s. Now, you can't approach your lifting the same way you did in your 20s to do this. So I'm going to give you 6 tips on how to continue progressing into your 70s, maintaining your strength and exceptional function as you age. Okay, so tip number 1 is to decrease the frequency of your hard workouts. Now, I want to preface this by saying, if you're a guy who's trying to get into a consistent workout routine, your goal is to be working out consistently, and so this does not apply to you. Until you are working out, 2 to 4 hours a week, this is not going to apply to you. This is for the guys who really enjoy the training, and maybe they were training 6 times a week when they were younger guys, right? And they could go heavy most of the time, but now you're not going to be able to do that. Okay? This doesn't mean that you can't go heavy, but you need to allow more recovery time. And there's a few different reasons for this. Number 1, there's going to be usually for guys, there's going to be some changes in testosterone levels. Now, as I've talked about in some other videos, it is possible to maintain normal ranges of testosterone all the way up into your mid-70s, but the reason why most guys' testosterone tends to fall is because they have, and this will go into the other point later on for the reason why you need more recovery, but they have a shift in priorities, right? They have more stuff going on. And so if you continue to have the lifestyle of a guy in his 20s as a man who is has a family, has a career, has more stresses, more responsibilities in his life, yes, testosterone levels are going to go down, your physical fitness is going to go down as well. So it doesn't mean that it's a given that your testosterone levels and your physical fitness need to deteriorate as you age. It means that you need to change the way that you live to continue progressing as you age. Okay? So the testosterone levels, yeah, they can go down a little bit, but there's also, the other thing is a change in the way your body absorbs testosterone. Now, I was reading this in an article, and they were saying, that you're not going to be as receptive to testosterone. Your androgen receptors aren't going to be as receptive to it as you age. And this is only true for certain tissues in the body, right? Limited amount of tissues in the body, yes, this is true. But they also did a study, so I wanted to go kind of cooperate and look at multiple different sources, and I found a study that they compared guys who were able to walk, right? So relatively healthy, guys 60 to 75 years old, right? And they compared them to guys 19 to 35 years old, right? And so what they did, they gave them I think it was sex hormone binding globulin injection thing, right? To basically wipe the testosterone slate clean. Young guys are naturally going to have higher testosterone levels than older guys typically, right? So they wanted to make sure that the playing field was level. And so they did that, and then they gave them exogenous testosterone, hormone replacement type stuff, in the ranges of 25 to 50 milligrams, 300 milligrams, and then 600 milligrams of testosterone per day. And what they noticed is that both groups, when they got this, saw increases in muscle size and strength by having added testosterone in. What was interesting though is that in the low testosterone group, because having only like 25 milligrams or whatever in the low end group is not going to give you normal levels of testosterone, right? And so these guys had low levels of testosterone, both the young guys and the old guys. And what was interesting is the young guys actually gained more body fat than the old guys, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But otherwise, there wasn't too much of a difference between those, meaning that, yes, even though there is some changes in the androgen receptors' ability to absorb the testosterone, make it more bioavailable and stuff like that, as you age, that it's not as great as we think from seeing this study here. So moving on to point number 3 is you have more responsibilities, as I talked about before, right? And so because you have more stresses in your life, you have more things competing for your time, you're going to have less energy, and so you're not going to be able to train as hard, as often as you did as a younger guy, right? Because you just have more total stuff. And I talked about this in other videos, right? The principle of general adaptation syndrome, the gas principle, right? Where all stresses in life are additive. If they are physical stressors, mental stressors, and emotional stressors, all these combine to increase how full your stress bucket is. So, and then the last one would be that if you are a guy who's been training consistently for a while, you're going to be a lot stronger, probably have more muscle mass than a younger guy who's just starting out. And anybody, young or old, who has more muscle mass and more strength, you're going to it's going to take longer for you to recover from hard workouts. And so this is why you should train with a little less frequency, like every other day, rather than 6 days a week and 1 day off. All right, so tip number 2 here is to decrease the number of hard sets that you are doing in a workout, right? So instead of doing straight sets, so a common protocol is like doing 5 by 5 for strength, right? Instead of doing 5 sets of 5, where after the warm-up set, every set is the same, have just one really hard set within 9 to 9.5 RPE, or rating of perceived exertion. So a very, very hard last set, right? And instead of doing everyone at like a 7 or 8 level of intensity, or even a 9 level of intensity, like maybe you could do when you're in your 20s, right? You do moderate loads, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, right? And then on that last one, you do the really heavy set, and that's going to work better for a guy who's older. Another option is to do something like my dad taught me when I was actually in high school, which was his bench press routine, is to do a pyramid, right? So you start off with a little bit lighter, maybe you're doing 10, and then you add, some weight, and you do 7, and then you add some weight, and you do 5, and then you add some more weight, you do 3, hit the peak, and then you can decide if you want to come back down as well, because you kind of have to, as an older guy, you have to choose between frequency of training, volume of training, and intensity of training. So if you have higher volume of training, the intensity needs to be in that moderate load range. If your intensity is lower, then you can have higher, volume, right? And if you're training just to kind of stimulate, right? So if you're a guy just, struggling to get the time to go to the gym, and you're struggling to be consistent with it, don't say, okay, I need to do an hour workout today. You can do, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but do that 6-7 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, right? Because you'll be hitting a different aspect of your training every day, right? And since the intensity isn't super high and you're just stimulating your muscles every day, you can do that every day, right? But if you're training to actually progress and get stronger, build more muscle, you're going to have to train hard enough to do that, and that's going to require more recovery time as an older guy. All right, so tip number 3 here is form. Focus on your form. The last rep of your last set should be your best rep. Don't compromise your form to get an extra rep in, because not only are you increasing the risk of injuring yourself, you're also, the mechanics of how you're moving it, if you're cheating the rep, are not going to be stimulating the muscle. You're going to increase the risk of injuring the joint, pulling a muscle or whatever, and you're not going to be engaging that muscle fully, because you're going to be skipping parts of the engagement by cheating the rep. So make sure rep to rep to rep to rep, it's always prioritize the form of how you're doing the exercise, especially as an older guy, because your joints are going to have less integrity. If anything, you can try to keep on working, getting stronger and stuff. And actually what I teach in my Hybrid Strength online coaching program is where we have this hybrid, it's 4 different strength training styles, right? And so we help you to get the proper amount of volume and intensity to make it so that you can maintain, or if you're a newer guy, increase that strength, right? And then build the muscle, have the explosive power, the agility, all these different things by combining these workouts and structuring them in the proper way so that you don't have any junk volume and that you can be broadly fit, have strength, like strength endurance, you can have the just raw strength, and then also the explosive speed and power that you need for to be a good athlete. And power is one of the things that tends to decrease with age, and it is also one of the biggest indicators of, or predictors of, longevity, even above having more muscle or more strength. Alright, so as I was doing the prep for this video, it came as a surprise to me as one of the sources that I was looking at, and they were talking about if you're going to do heavy lifting as an older lifter, because most of the time as an older lifter, you want to stay in those moderate rep ranges, focus on more time under tension, more volume, right? And make the trade-off between, am I going to train with more frequency and less volume, or am I going to train with more volume and less frequency, right? And I think for general longevity, general just good health, training at a moderate intensity and moderate volume more frequently is a good idea. Now, if you do want to focus on getting strong though, and that's why maybe alternating your focus between having times when you are focusing on getting stronger than times when you're just focusing on maintaining and keeping your health up, right? But if you want to focus on getting stronger, then yes, you do need to be focusing on more heavy work, heavy intensity, right? And so what I was thinking when the guys like use the pins, right, and do the partial reps, because the part of the movement where you are most likely to get injured is at the bottom of the rep range and at the sticking point when the muscles are at their longest points and also under the most tension, right? But these are also the ranges of motion where you are going to build the most muscle too, because when the muscle is stretched under load that has a higher hypertrophy response than partial ranges of motion though. Now, the benefit of the partial range of motion though is that there's actually been shown that if you do squats to 90 degrees versus all the way down, right, that it actually translates better over to sprint speed and jumping height, right? So you're vertical. So if you're an athlete or you want to be more explosive, sprint speeds, things like that, then it would make more sense to do these partials, right? And you use the pins so that you don't risk injuring yourself if you can't make it up out of the hole and, you know, pull that muscle in that elongated, stretched position. Okay, so now if you are going to use these partial rep ranges, since they are you're not going through as much range of motion, there's going to be less intra-set and intra-rep fatigue, which means that you're going to be able to do more crisp form, you're going to be able to produce more strength, and you're also to decrease the risk of injuring yourself as the muscle fatigue. But with that being said, you should be doing more reps to get more volume out of that, maybe more sets as well. So if a standard strength training protocol is like 5x5 reps, add another 1 to 3 reps. So maybe you're doing like 8 reps per set of partial reps, whereas you'd be doing 5 reps if you're doing full range of motion sets. All right, so point number 5. Point number 5 is focusing on grip strength. Why? Because grip strength is one of the greatest predictors of longevity. Not because grip strength in and of itself, because you don't have a lot of muscles in your hands or anything like that. It has to do with the connection to your nervous system. It has a correlation with overall function of your nervous system because we have the most connection for the nervous system to our hands, right? We do a lot of things with our hands, and so you want to maintain the ability to have that, right? And so the other thing is, one of the first signs of overtraining and not having adequate recovery, because remember we're saying that you want to have enough recovery time to actually be making sure that you are able to overload the muscles and train hard enough, right? One of the first things to go is your grip strength, okay? And so that is what you want to be working on. Making sure that your grip strength stays strong and keeping an eye on that over time. Most of the time, if you're doing deadlifts, if you're doing pull-ups, things like where your farmers carries and stuff, you're going to be working your grip strength adequately. You can also add in more, volume work with wrist curls and stuff too. But most of the time I find if you from time to time do deadlifts without straps, do rowing without straps, if you're doing the pull-ups and things like that, you're going to be strengthening your grip adequately. But if your grip starts to get weaker than it was last week and it continues to get weaker, you might want to back off the frequency or the volume of your training. All right, so the last one that we're going to touch on today is sled work. Heavy sled work, or not heavy sled work, but many times as we get older, the joints just don't respond as well to the heavy lifting. So if you are one of these guys that's having knee pain, things like that, doing sled work is a great way to build up the resilience, and it's also a great way to have time under tension so that your muscles can actually grow as well. And anecdotally, there was a story of a guy who was a bodybuilder in his 60s, and he can no longer train with traditional leg exercises because of too much pain. And so his trainer put him on a protocol of doing sled pushes, usually 30 to 40 seconds of pushing and pulling 3 to 4 sets, right? And doing this like 2 to 3 times a week. And his legs grew from doing this, so much so that he decided he was going to go back into competing. And when he did, in the drug-tested federation, he was actually able to outperform many of his younger competitors in the show. So, my own personal experience, years ago, I worked at a grocery store and I was pushing carts out of the parking lot, right? And for, the entirety of my shift, so anywhere between 6 to 8 hours a day, every 5 to 10 minutes on average, because you'd have slow times a day and busy times of the day, I was pushing 10 to 20 carts in, with this, under these loads. And it was, the run would be, maybe I'm pushing for a minute or two straight before getting a break. And what I noticed is that I could tolerate heavy lifting much better when I was doing this. And because of all that time under tension, I could run upstairs like I was just floating up the stairs, right? And so that was a great thing for me. And so much that when I quit that job, I actually built myself a sled so that I could duplicate it. Now, if you don't want to go through the trouble of doing the sleds and stuff, another great way to keep the knees healthy, build the quads and stuff, if you're not tolerating a lot of these traditional exercises, is just cycling. Look at, serious cyclists. They usually have pretty good leg development, right? And so doing that, riding up and down hills, can build the quads as well. And so in general, do maybe 60 meters of sled pushing, do a couple sets of that, do a couple times a week. Make sure you go backwards as well. And if you're going backwards, the goal is to not do super heavy, right? But enough that you can feel the muscle working the whole time when you're doing it, and that's going to help to keep your knees healthy as well. So guys, that's what I've got for you today. Hopefully these tips help you out. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you are interested in checking out the Hybrid Strength program, a synergistic blend of 4 different strength training styles combined with a synergistic nutrition plan that complements the training that you're doing in that, let me know about that as well. And we'll see you all for next week for more health and fitness information. Thanks, guys.